Equity Commission meeting. My name is Dr. Larissa Estes, and I'm honored to serve as the Executive Director for the Commission. We are gathered here today to begin organizing the Commission operations and to begin sharing a little bit of baseline information as to the work that has been done today and make sure that the public is informed on how we intend on moving the Racial Equity Commission forward. For the first half of the meeting, I will be facilitating the meeting on the behalf of the Commission until we elect a chair and a vice chair. Next slide, please. Thank you. We have a full agenda today, and there have been hard copies available outside, and other relevant meeting materials are available outside our room. In addition, meeting materials are available at racialequity.opr.ca.gov. And a special reminder for anyone speaking into the mic or doing public comment, we need you to directly speak into the mic so that you are heard over the Zoom call. Our agenda today is pretty straightforward. We're going to do a welcome, of course, distinguished guests, and have some few remarks. We have elected officials present with us today and will be appearing throughout the day. We will do some opening remarks from the Office of Planning and Research Director, as well as the Cabinet Secretary. We'll also have our election, our approval of bylaws, do a review of the Bagley-Keene Act, so that we are all aware as to what we can and cannot do as a commission. You'll receive a report from myself on the work as the Executive Director, as well as some thinking as to how do we start building a framework for the Commission and how do we understand the work that has been done to date. And at that point, we'll do public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. Public comment will be available throughout the entire meeting during each agenda item. And at this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Augustine to share the public comment process and procedures for today.
Thank you, Dr. Estes. And thanks to everyone joining us today, in person, online, or by phone through Zoom webinar platform. I'm here to provide some information to help guide us all through the processes for this hybrid meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. To minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute your phone yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform doesn't enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you are using the online Zoom webinar, the best way is by using the Q&A function. Several members of our staff are monitoring the Zoom Q&A function to facilitate public access to the council meeting and may remove disruptive or threatening content. If you have joined by phone and you have access to email, please email racialequitycommission@opr.ca.gov. If you plan to make in-person public comment, you must fill out a comment card provided at the table near the back of the room by the sign-in. Please fill out the public comment card to indicate your name and which item you would like to comment on. Please bring your comment card to the table at the front to my left with the sign collecting public comment cards. When the chair opens a public comment period for your item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for that item. Please line up when I say your name in the order that I have called it. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name to the podium at the left side of the room, facing the dais, on the right side. If you plan to make remote public comment, you must be joining the meeting via Zoom, either through your desktop or by phone by calling in. To make a public comment by phone, when the public comment period opens for your item, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to speak for public comment. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, click Raise Hand under the Participants menu. You can find that at the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand by phone, press *9. When it is your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you are online, you will see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you. You will need to click the option to approve unmute. After that, you can begin your comment. If you are on the phone, you will hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. Please begin your comment after you hear the recorded message. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. A timer will be screen shared. Please monitor the timer and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, you will be notified when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action once we mute your microphone. Thank you all for your participation. I will hand it back to you, Dr. Estes.
Thank you, Augustine. We can now open for any public comment that is related to this agenda item.
If there is anyone who wishes to comment on this item, please fill out the comment card in public person or raise your hand for the virtual public comment now.
We will now take virtual public comments. We will now begin with the public comment from Suzanne Kim.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Kim. This is something not on the agenda. I only have 2 minutes. The Strategic Growth Council it oversees a grant process for affordable housing for use of the proceeds from the Carbon Trade Fund. They recently changed the guidelines that actually.
Excuse me, Susan. This item is not on the. This is not part of the opening. There is a time at the very end of the meeting for which you can provide public comment on items not on the agenda.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes our virtual public comments. I'll pass it back to Augustine.
Concludes our in-person public comments. Hand it back to you, Dr. Estes.
Thank you. Thank you. We are thrilled today to be joined by a number of distinguished guests throughout the meeting. And at this time, we have Assembly Member Arambula here, who was the principal co-author of SB 17, which really jump-started the process of getting to this point of having a Racial Equity Commission. And so, Assembly Member, thank you so much for joining us today, and please provide some remarks.
to have this leadership from our governor, and I'm looking forward to the work that the Commission can do together. Thank you for allowing me to share some words with you today.
Thank you, Assemblymember. We appreciate you joining us here today. And at this moment, just coming in here, we have Dr. Pan, who is the principal author and literally just running in. Dr. Pan, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're just excited to have you and welcome any remarks that you have for this occasion.
Well, thank you so very much. I think all of you know parking is always a challenge around here. Something perhaps needs to be fixed by a leader of the city. Anyway, so I'm really thrilled to be here today at this inaugural meeting of this commission, the Racial Equity Commission. This commission is a result of some, fairly hard work and struggle by a coalition of civil rights, racial justice organizations when I first authored SB 17, that was at a time, it was during COVID. People were declaring racism as a public health a crisis. And when I introduced the legislation, I didn't just want to do a declaration, but we wanted to actually create a mechanism for progress in the state. And so working with, again, this great coalition, and I probably can't cite all the names of all the people in the coalition, but really wanted to particularly thank Catalyst and Greenlining, NextGen, and many others as well, to say that we need to have, create a framework. We need a commission. We need people. We need accountability. And I do want to thank the governor's office because they worked with us, and it's always challenging when you're the head of the state government, right? To then voluntarily say, oh, by the way, we're going to have a commission that may actually critique the work that we're doing. We bring our heart into this. We believe in racial justice and racial equity, but then we're going to also create a commission that's going to say, well, I know you do, but we could do better. And so it was a great dialogue with the governor's office and the coalition, but it took 2 years. And then what happened was interesting enough. For those of you who know legislative processes, we fortunately the final kind of pieces didn't really quite until deadline. And I really appreciate that the governor then said, well, I realize the legislative process and timing-wise, but I'm going to do it as an executive order so that we can do this right? So we had come to agreement, but timelines had gotten past us. We do this right. And so I really appreciate the governor doing that, and then the leadership the governor has made in putting this together and providing support as well, because we said that was really important. We could have a commission and no staff, no support, and you wouldn't be able to have some resources. I think you could always use a little more than they got you, but that's the comment. But thank you so much for agreeing to serve. The work that you do is so critical for our state. We always talk about how diverse our state is. I'm very proud that I represented a district that was one amongst the most diverse in the whole country. This is critical work, and I really want to thank all of you for taking your time. I actually serve on another state body that I have to run off to their meeting right now, but I know how much work it can be, and your work's even more. So thank you so much for your service. I look forward to seeing the products of the work that you come out with. And just again, really want to thank again the coalition that brought this forth. I know they're going to be continuing to watch to be sure that we move forward. And also want to thank Governor Newsom and his administration for also their support and being sure that they follow through and that this is happening. So thank you and congratulations. And I look forward to the fantastic work that I know will come out of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pan. We appreciate you being here today. We may have additional assembly members and senators coming over throughout the day, and we'll find natural breaks within our agenda to welcome them for any additional remarks. We may also have some representation here from the following offices. Is anyone here from Assemblymember Rivas' office, Speaker of the Assembly? No? Okay, and also Senator Min's office. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and we're glad to have you here. We thank these leaders really for making time to be here today. I know that it's a busy day and it's also raining and parking is terrible, so it makes it hard getting around, but it really means a lot to have you all present and to really feel the support, especially at our inaugural meeting. That means a lot because a lot of you all have a really crazy schedule, and we know that trying to get you here. But we understand that in order to achieve the greatest impact of this commission, it is working with the governor's office, it is working with the legislature, and it's especially important to work with the community. And that's what we look here to center within the Racial Equity Commission and how we work together to accomplish a California for all. So really do thank you for being here today. At this moment, we can now take public comment on this agenda item, the introduction of distinguished guests. Is there any public comment?
There are no in-person public comments for this item. Are there any virtual public comments?
there are any virtual public comments, please use the raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak for public comment. I believe there is no virtual public comment at this moment. I will hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. At this time, we are joined by the Office of Planning and Research Director, Sam Asefa, who will share a few opening remarks and introduce Cabinet Secretary Ann Patterson. Director Asefa, thank you so much for being here today.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Estes and Larissa. Today is a monumental day for our state, both in the establishment and now the first meeting of the Racial Equity Commission. As someone who has worked in government in work around racial equity and related work in around the country, including the states of Washington, Colorado, Illinois, I can attest that the establishment of such a commission within state government is unique and a great testament to the leadership of California in this space. For that reason, it is a monumental day as well. The charge of the commission will be transformative in addressing structural and institutional racism in state government. The Racial Equity Commission will chart the state's path toward embedding and operationalizing racial equity in our policies, practices, and investments. It will also provide technical assistance to local governments in their racial equity efforts. At the direction of the governor, state agencies and departments have been on their respective journeys towards racial equity, and the commission provides a space to acknowledge the work that has been done, explore strategies to overcome persistent challenges. And the commission will also help develop a framework that will help move that work forward in terms of guiding state agencies and state operations to embed equity in their work. And then within this commission, the lived experiences and diverse voices we'll hear from and throughout this journey will inform California government where equity is front and center in all of our work. I am really excited to learn more about the commission's vision and look forward to my office supporting their efforts in moving our states towards achieving racial equity. I want to thank you, commissioners, for dedicating your time for this work. My executive director, Dr. Larissa Estes, staff, for your work and commitment to this really important work. And now it's a great pleasure to introduce my colleague from the Office of Governor Newsom, Cabinet Secretary Ann Patterson. Ann?
This is such an exciting day. Thank you, Director Asefa. Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today with our new commissioners, with our distinguished guests, and all of you joining in person and virtually for this inaugural meeting of California's Racial Equity Commission. It's a big day. Over the last 5 years of the administration, in partnership with the legislature and many, many committed stakeholders, we have accomplished historic and concrete changes that are improving California's lives, advancing justice, and reducing longstanding disparities to help Californians be safe, healthy, and thrive, regardless of where they live or who they are. Together, we have helped Californians start to achieve their dreams with more job creation, apprenticeships, job training, and small business support. As Dr. Arambula mentioned earlier, we expanded health care coverage to all Californians, regardless of income or immigration status. And we've made unprecedented investments in health care with a particular focus on youth mental health. We expanded subsidized child care, over $2 billion in additional funding so that Californians have access to quality child care options. We expanded cash assistance for vulnerable Californians, including low-income children and families in the CalWORK system. and we're implementing an entire new grade of elementary school, transitional kindergarten, and we've made school lunches free for all Californians. In partnership with the Legislative Black Caucus, we have implemented a new equity multiplier that is injecting $300 million a year in needed additional funding to struggling schools and struggling students to help address the achievement gap. I could go on, but what these programs and investments have in common, and what you'll see, I think, reflected as a theme in the priorities of the administration, is a strong focus on lifting up and providing opportunities to support low-income, disadvantaged, and marginalized Californians to help them realize their full potential. That is why in California, Governor Newsom in 2022 issued an executive order directing state agencies and departments to take additional actions to embed equity within and across state government. This commitment reflects our values, and it is also foundational to serving all Californians and advancing equitable outcomes. I think it's important to take a moment to unpack what embedding equity means to the administration, because it's important. From our perspective, equity does not and cannot live in a silo. It isn't separate from the day-to-day work of our agencies. It is the governor's direction that equity be central as a focus in decision-making from the outset of program design all the way through implementation. What that means in practice is that we are working to embed equity analysis and consideration into the mission, the practices, and the policies of each agency and department, informed by historically disadvantaged and underserved communities. The executive order and subsequent actions reflect a recognition that we must develop and implement effective and durable tools to ensure that all our actions in state government are advancing a California for all. A key component of the executive order that I'm very excited to talk about today is the establishment of the Racial Equity Commission, which is a proposal that was developed by Senator Dr. Pan, along with many very committed racial equity organizations and civil rights groups. As we are all eager to see unfold, the Commission will produce a racial equity framework that will be informed by community engagement across California and consist of tools to promote racial equity and address structural racism at all levels of government and even beyond government in California. This work will be critical to inform ongoing efforts within our administration to better the lives of Californians, and also to deeply root the equity-driven and transformative policies and programs that we have invested billions of dollars in, from infrastructure to housing to education to healthcare, so that their impacts are sustained beyond any one administration. Administration leaders, I can attest, across agencies and departments are eager for the technical assistance and support that this commission can provide as they are implementing this charge. And so I thank you in advance for the very hard work that this will be, the commitment and the collaboration in the coming months and years. We look forward to learning from the expertise and lived experience that will feed into the framework from all of those in this room and from people across California, and also how this work can support our partners at the local level, in community-based organizations, and service providers. Thank you for your partnership in advancing racial equity and tackling the barriers that undermine our collective prosperity. The governor looks forward to this work and thanks you for the work that you're doing on this commission to transform California and continue our progress for all Californians. I want to end by thanking Dr. Estes and all of the staff at OPR that have been working behind the scenes for many months now to make this meeting a reality, and that will be supporting your work throughout the coming months and years. So I wish you luck and thank you so much for your commitment to California. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary Patterson. At this point, we can open up public comment for any related items for opening remarks. So is there any public comment?
There are no in-person public comments. Are there any virtual public comments.
If there are any virtual public comments, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom. I believe there are no public comments for this section. I will hand it back.
Thank you, Mina. Well, the first order of business is to elect a chair and a vice chair. Next slide, please. And if you can hit the next slide, please. In December of this past year, I reached out to the members of the commission to let them know that we were going to need to elect some leadership for the commission. And I asked for volunteers. And I did get 2 volunteers, and their names are on the screen here. We've had 1 volunteer for each role. For the chair, Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood, and for the vice chair, Commissioner Simboil Wright. These roles are really critical roles to help ensure that the commission, during our public meetings as well as in development of the framework, has some sort of order, and that we're able to really address the needs of what we're hearing from the community, what we're hearing from the commissioners, as well as what we're hearing from the state. And since there's no chair at this time, I'm happy to facilitate the nominations and voting process for these 2 positions. If there's only 1 candidate nominated for each office, Robert's Rules of Order does allow us to elect by acclamation. If there is more than 1 candidate for an office, a roll call vote will be required to elect to the office. And we will need nominations for sure. So at this point, I will open up nominations for the office of chair. Are there any nominations for the office of chair? And this has to come from the commission.
I would like to nominate Dr. Luke Wood.
And that was Commissioner Matthews with the nomination. Is there a second? Commissioner Salas with a second. Are there any further nominations for the role of chair? Nominations are closed for the role of chair. For the role of vice chair, are there any nominations for the role of vice chair?
I nominate Simboil Wright.
That was Commissioner Richardson with the nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kim with a second. Any further nominations for the role of vice chair? Hearing none, nominations are closed, so we have a slate. And I think at this point we can take any public comment, and then we will go to a roll call vote. So at this time, is there any public comment?
If there is anyone who wishes to comment on this item, please fill out a comment card for the in-person public comment, or raise your hand for virtual public comment now. At the moment, we don't have any in-person public comment. Do we have any virtual public comment?
We will now begin with the virtual public comment. The first person is C-Rad's Carr. If you can mention your question. C-Rad's Carr, you are unmuted. You may ask your question.
Hi, everyone. My question was how these organizations working in the civic engagement field be an active part of the Racial Equity Commission to ensure diverse ways of minority communities such as South Asians be heard, especially because the proposal is trying to produce a racial equity framework across California. Thank you.
Thank you for that public comment. We may ask you to provide that public comment towards the latter part of the meeting, as this is for public comment only on the election of the chair and vice chair. Thank you.
Concludes our virtual public comments. and I'll pass it back.
Thank you. So we do have a candidate for each role, and for acclamation, do you need anything for acclamation?
Motion and a second to approve the slate by acclamation.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the slate by acclamation, please?
So move.
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Hedrick with the motion, Commissioner Maldonado with the second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Candace Bowles. Yea or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
A.
Commissioner John Kim. Yay. Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Yay.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Yay.
Commissioner Jolie Onodera.
Yay.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson.
Yay.
Commissioner Angelica Salas.
Yay.
Commissioner Dr. J. Luke Wood.
Same.
Commissioner Simba Wright.
Same.
Executive Director Larissa.
Oh, I don't vote.
The vote is 8 votes in favor, 0 votes in opposition, and 2 abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries. It is with deep pleasure I get to turn this meeting over to Commissioner Wood and Commissioner Wright to lead this meeting moving forward. Thank you so much for serving as our inaugural officers. I look forward to working directly with the both of you. I will be in a second handing you a script to help you get along through this first meeting, but thank you for your service. We do appreciate it, and thank you to the commissioners for helping us move through this process. I am sitting down.
All right, so we will now move on our agenda to the next item, which is to review and approve the Commission's bylaws. These bylaws govern the internal operations, procedures, and conduct of the Commission. The Commission staff has drafted an initial set of bylaws that are publicly posted on the Commission's website. They can be found at racialequity.opr.ca.gov. The next 2 slides, 17 and 18, provide a high-level overview of the articles and sections included in the bylaws. We'd like to see if the Executive Director might want to walk briefly through the bylaws.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This is just a high-level overview of the bylaws. They're pretty straightforward for any beginning organization. We have the name, we have a preamble actually, a name, a purpose, the membership, meetings. Next slide, please. Officers, how the officers are selected to selection of chair, our budget, ad hoc committees, amendment of bylaws, and dissolution of the commission. There were copies available outside of the room. They're also available online on our website. And at this moment, I can turn it over to you, Commissioner Wood, if you'd like to facilitate any commission discussion on the current draft of the bylaws.
Yes. So I know everyone has had an opportunity to review the bylaws, and are there any discussions, questions, or comments from the Commission on this item? Right. So, yes, Commissioner Kim.
Thank you so much, Chair. The question about committees. Oh, more? Okay. I had a question on committees. it notes mostly about ad hoc committees. It calls out ad hoc committees, and with a cap of 2 commissioners at a time. I was wondering if we wanted to differentiate standing committees versus ad hoc, and whether or not that 2-commissioner cap would hold for a standing committee, just because I know there may be some issues that will be sort of running through the entire course of the commission.
Thank you, Dr. Estes. Dr. Estes?
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. That is up to the commission if you'd like to change it from ad hoc to standing. In terms of the more than 2 active members related to the size, I believe that is a requirement of Bagley-Keene, so I'm looking over my shoulder to our staff counsel.
Happy to weigh in here. The advice on many bodies, state bodies, will have an ad hoc limitation of 2 members to avoid the establishment of a standing committee, which would then trigger application of Bagley-Keene. 2 members to do any sort of exploratory work, dig into an issue area, work and come back to the larger body is a common practice and an easy way for the body to delegate and to get some work done outside of meetings and to provide responsibility and opportunities to members to weigh in. The commission can absolutely develop standing committees that would then be subject to Bagley-Keene, even under these bylaws as well. So it's more about defining the limitation on the use of ad hoc with the ability to continue to develop and establish standing committees. Does that answer your question?
It certainly does. And we could get to this later as we proceed with the operations. I do think there will be issues where a standing committee with more than 2 commissioners, therefore we have to do the public notice and what have you, may be required, but we can get into that over time.
Commissioner Kim, would you want to make a recommendation right now on some language that can be considered?
Given that we're talking about bylaws at this point, just having the option of standing committees, but we could amend the bylaws at any point is my understanding. So I guess, again, as we proceed with operations, we might make an amendment to the bylaws and establish standing committees. So I just want to put that on the table without a recommendation of change.
Commissioner Maldonado.
Thank you, Chair. Under the budget section, Section 2 for fundraising and development, it states that the commission may accept federal funds for the purposes of this commission, and then it goes on to say commission may accept gifts, donations, grants, but it doesn't have like a framework for what we should not be accepting. And if there is no prescribed framework by the governor's office, then we may want to create more specificity onto the framework of what can and should not be accepted. I have no recommendations for language at this time.
Okay. Point well taken, though, for sure. Other comments, questions? Dr. Estes?
Thank you, Commissioner Wood or Chair Wood. We can take these recommendations to look at language related to adding a section on standing committees, as well as adding a section or adding content as to what we cannot accept in terms of fundraising and development, and bring that as a recommendation to the next commission hearing.
Thank you. At this time, should we move forward with a vote to approve the bylaws?
I believe public comments.
Public comment? Okay. Yeah. Look at the notes better. Okay, thanks. All right, so before we move forward with the motion, I would like to open it up for public comment related to an agenda item on the approval of the bylaws. Do we have any public comments?
If there is anyone who wishes to comment on this item, please fill out a comment card for in-person public comment or raise your hand for virtual public comment now. We will have in-person comment first. I will begin the public comment period by reading the names of everyone who signed up to comment on this item, which is item number 4 on the agenda. We have no in-person public comment for item number 4. I will hand it over to Mina for virtual public comment.
If there are any virtual public comments, please use the raise hand feature. I believe there are no public comments at this moment. I'll hand it back.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second to approve the commission bylaws?
Move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Matthews,
Second that.
seconded by Commissioner Onodera. And so now we'll move forward to vote. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Candace Bowles. Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
Aye.
Commissioner John Kim.
Yes.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Yay.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Jolie Onodera.
Aye.
Commissioner Yolanda R. Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Angelica Salas.
Yay.
Commissioner Dr. J. Luke Wood.
Yay.
Commissioner Simboa Wright.
Yay.
The vote is 10 votes in favor of bylaws approval and 0 votes in opposition.
So, have bylaws. Wonderful, thank you. All right, so now this time we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the Bagley-Keene Act. Overview will be provided by Matt Reed, who's staff counsel with the Strategic Growth Council.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Matt Reed, and I'm SGC's staff counsel, the Strategic Growth Council, and I'm here alongside OPR's chief counsel, Jennifer Holman, be providing advice on Bagley-Keene and other issues that are relevant to the commission. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be at this historic event and am privileged to present this today. So this presentation is intended to provide a brief overview of the basics to let the commission know that we are a resource that you can come to if you have additional questions, but to kind of give a lay of the land and overview of the requirements of Bagley-Keene and how it impacts your work as a commission. So today we'll be going through a high-level overview. We'll cover why the commission is subject to the act, so it kind of helps clarify what the act covers and provide some details that help explain some of the administrative steps that the commission takes that might not otherwise be intuitive, because this is not always an intuitive statute or rules, so it's kind of helpful to recognize that and just walk through it. I promise this will be brief and there's opportunity for questions at the end. So we'll start with authority. In this case, the guarantee of public participation in public meetings of state bodies is enshrined in the California Constitution. That guarantee is fleshed out in more detail in statute through relevant government code statutes, what we know as Bagley-Keene. There is some interpretive guidance from the courts that we refer to, as well as interpretive guidance from the Attorney General. So why mention the constitutional background? Because when statutes implementing constitutional guarantees are interpreted, courts historically prioritize the policy that underlies the constitutional provision. So this informs our advice as counsel, and it's important to recognize that when the court is presented with an issue recognizing a constitutional guarantee, they tend to take a pretty conservative approach, which means that, again, it might not always be intuitive, and you might not always expect the outcome on a given question. So state bodies that are covered by the Act, like the Racial Equity Commission, are created by executive order or statute. And at that point, they become subject to the rules that we're discussing here today. Whether and when the commission decides to create subcommittees or advisory bodies to aid its work, those bodies would also be subject to Bagley-Keene to the extent that they're not ad hoc and under 2. However, there's some different rules for these for advisory and subcommittees that we can talk about with regard to teleconference meetings, and we'll get into that a little bit later. There's some new rules out there as of January 1. And I want to talk about covered conduct and what this really means for your work as members of the commission. It's important to talk about what this actually regulates and how that relates back to the Constitution and statutory authority. Essentially, these laws govern the administration of state bodies and, by extension, the commission of the conduct of members of state bodies. Exactly how it governs each of these will be explored in more detail, but I find it's helpful to identify that to the extent that members of a state body might inadvertently or advertently trigger application of these rules by, say, making a phone call or talking to a number of different commissioners, it's valuable to share that these provisions do govern the conduct of the members, as well as put requirements on the administrative team that are supporting this meeting. So, go to next slide. Thank you. So we get into kind of the heart of Bagley-Keene as an issue, which is defining a meeting. What is a meeting? It's its key feature, and the statutory language is really helpful here, and it really guides everything that we do. Any congregation of a majority of the members of a state body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any item within the body's subject matter jurisdiction. So there are state bodies all across state government. Some have very, very limited statutory obligations. They are only directed to do one little thing. Some are given really broad missions and directives. And so that last piece, that subject matter jurisdiction, really varies a lot from commission, from state body to state body. There's elements of this rule, which is a majority of the body. So we talk about quorum in the bylaws, 50% plus one. Here, meeting at the same time and place. There's a little bit more a broader interpretation of that than physically being in the same spot at the same time. We'll get into that. To discuss or deliberate on any item within the body's subject matter jurisdiction. That's kind of the elements that we walk through. So the Act prohibits that conduct unless the state bodies are meeting to hear, discuss, or deliberate at a publicly noticed meeting. So that's the impact is that you can do it, but it has to be at the meeting. You can't do it outside of a meeting. And I apologize if this is obvious. I've always just wanted to err on the side of caution and making sure that folks know. So what this really talks about and what this is getting at is that it prohibits what are called serial meetings, and the Act actually explicitly prohibits serial meetings. So what a serial meeting is maybe inadvertently or a purposeful attempt to communicate with a majority of the members outside of a publicly noticed and agendized meeting. There's kind of two ways that this tends to happen, and this slide talks about the first way. This would be a series of communications, each of which involves less than a majority, but when you take them all together, it's a majority kind of once it gets built up. So member representatives of the state body are also prohibited from using a series of communications with other members on an item within the state body's subject matter. And I'll talk about, so we have one example here, and this was previously presented as a quiz, so that's the multiple choice piece, but there's no pop quizzes today. So the Grant Awards Board has 7 members, and an upcoming agenda item awarding grant funds to 10 out of 20 projects that have submitted timely grant applications. So this is a really common kind of fact pattern that a lot of our state boards and commissions see, and then this is something that could happen. Member A calls member B calls member C, and this is all on the same topic. Member C calls member D. In that instance, because you have 7 board members and 4 of them have collaborated or discussed an item in their subject matter jurisdiction, that represents a serial meeting. And that's kind of called a chain. I like to call it like a bracelet series of communication. And there's another, which is called hub and spoke. And that's where one person, so in this one person talks to multiple people as opposed to it going in order. So that example would be member D calls member C, B, and A. 4 people have collaborated through member D, but it's not kind of in that, it's not set up quite so obviously. So those are serial meetings. That's the kind of conduct that's prohibited and what I just wanted to talk about and to always be aware of. Now, this doesn't show, the red does not show up well, so I'll walk everyone through it. There are some exceptions, but I will say that they are generally fairly narrow, and we want to take caution when we are doing anything that relies on an exception for this. Social gatherings are generally accepted. conferences, open and publicized meetings of other government bodies that are noticed that discuss topics of general concern, and open and noticed meetings of a standing committee, provided that a non-committee board member attend only as observers. So if we do get into a committee setup and there is a standing committee that is set up and other members attend, it's just, you won't be participating outside of that. The standing committee participates, leads the discussion, and then anyone who's not on that committee can attend, observe, listen, because it's a public meeting. You can't not go. But that's the kind of distinction there. So move on to the next slide, and I promise we are getting close. I want to highlight some of the many administrative requirements that are placed upon the conduct of a proper meeting. Sometimes when presented with the definition of a meeting, it might be, well, let's just have a quick meeting about this and, publicly notice. It's really hard to have a proper quick meeting, as I think there's a lot of nods of approval up here. So it's not something that can be thrown together at the last minute. You need that 10-day notice and agendizing period. There's a lot of requirements that fall on the staff to properly conduct that meeting. So, just knowing that this, and actually the next slide, I'll go through the numerous requirements that come with actually having a meeting on a given topic. So, putting something on the agenda late, is not something that is typically allowed for, bar, absent like really extraordinary circumstances. So, just want to kind of drive that home, walk through some of the steps that the staff took to put this meeting on today, and just to recognize that it's a lot to do this right. So I'll move on to the next slide. So opportunities for teleconference, and we are 2 slides away from done, I promise. So for decades, this area of law went pretty much unchanged, but COVID-19 really was the first time in a long time that anything changed since the advent of fax machines and teleconference. So significant changes were entertained for the conduct of teleconference meetings. Starting January 1st, new rules are in place that allow for additional teleconferencing opportunities. There were already provisions in place for teleconferencing opportunities, but in the COVID-19 kind of Zoom environment, there were some features of those teleconferencing regulations that were seen as onerous or potentially challenging. And so the legislature responded with additional new teleconferencing opportunities that this commission can avail itself of, and we're happy to bring back more on this if you'd like to explore more about how to do so. So there were some interim rules during COVID-19. The new rules generally do require a majority of members to attend in person. So there's not going to be many circumstances where everyone can just call in, and from wherever you are. Folks need to plan to be in person at a majority level in order to take advantage of this opportunity. Now, if a majority does assemble in person, then there are opportunities for additional members to remotely participate, and this remote participation is what's new. Formerly, folks had to notice their location and be calling in from a publicly accessible location. So wherever you were, you had to let other people into the room and sit with them. And it was challenging, particularly for people that were sick or otherwise unable to avail themselves of a publicly accessible place, an ADA compliant place. Now there are some additional opportunities, and again, we're happy to talk about that. So I won't kind of go through all of this, but we do plan to bring back to the commission a little bit more detail, flesh out some of the, we want to have policies around, in what order, or how do you establish that majority in person, who gets to avail themselves of remote participation, because it is something of a benefit. I have to go through penalties and remediation and remedies for violation of the act. It's serious stuff, and decisions that are made in violation of the act might be considered, if they are challenged, null and void. Court costs, legal fees awarded to citizens who successfully challenge, and there are potential criminal and misdemeanor penalties for severe and or ongoing violations. So I don't like to end on this slide. So if you have questions, I'm happy to take them here. but also wanted to share our contact information. Myself and Jennifer Holman are both, at your service and happy to advise you as you negotiate these rules. But yeah.
Through the chair, on the 10-day notice, is that business days or calendar days?
Those are typically calendar days. So we do count the weekends in those, and that creates, there's some, if the 10-day falls on a calendar day, then we end up posting on the Friday before. So functionally, it might be as many as 12 days.
How does this impact email communications amongst commissioners?
Absolutely. Great question. And it does. And there have been numerous instances where email chain has been deemed to be a meeting on a given topic and thus a violation of the Act. So what we generally advise is heavy use of BCC so that you can't inadvertently reply all and get everyone on inadvertently, let everyone know what you're thinking on a topic, which would then potentially create a serial meeting. It does impact your ability, Dr. Estes and or staff of the commission can certainly email information out to the commission as a whole. We advise to take care not to reply all. We'll be using BCC, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue anyway. But where anything that would apply to you in person would also apply to your email conduct too. So if you can email another member, but if that email goes into a third, a fourth, a fifth member, then we start to get into areas where you might be conducting a serial meeting via email. But it's a great question, and a great practice is to loop staff in on email. It's, so that they can kind of keep track and they know where those emails are and how many members are participating, just for risk management and also to protect the commission as a whole.
Other questions from the commission?
On that point, I will just also note that applies same thing for text, and texting is, I'd say, even more common a place for this issue to come up. But sorry to jump in.
And then I assume any communications between the commission, whether it would be on text or emails, all publicly disclosable.
Absolutely, and that's a completely different training.
Yeah.
Happy to provide information about. I think many of you are intimately familiar with the Public Records Act, but your conduct or your communications regarding commission business are largely going to be public records. The information that's provided out to the commission is public record generally, and the communications amongst the members themselves. So just to be aware of that. We can provide additional guidance if you don't have experience with that, but generally the work that you're doing here is a matter of public record.
Commissioner Salas?
Could you say a little bit more about the subject matter that is connected to this commission? Many of us work on racial equity every day, so we engage with each other on these issues consistently. So just in terms of what these commission meetings are limited to and the purpose.
Absolutely, and I think that there might be an opportunity for more detailed advice provided to the commission on this point. The statute organizing the Racial Equity Commission, the executive order previously, is broad. There's a lot of work that falls under the purview of the commission. Precisely what and how members of the commission interact with each other about issue areas. I think, again, to the point that not necessarily prohibited, but I think that we do need to be cautious about where there is work before the commission that might need to be tracked as far as how members of the commission are interacting, but we do recognize that it's really close. I would really encourage members of the commission to re-review the statute at this point, with this in mind. If you have, legal counsel among your staff, we're also happy to. I think that there's kind of discussion with individual members about how this impacts their work and what our advice is. So it's a very real challenge, but it's also not unsolvable. And but the charge of the commission is broad, and I do recognize that, and I recognize that you're all here because of your expertise and your work in that area. So, yeah, that's as good of an answer as I can give in the hypothetical.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, what is appropriate conduct as it relates to our social gatherings? And is the limitations on that both the number of congregating members as well as the content, or can the number of congregating members still be there, like, for instance, a majority present, but as long as the content of the discussion has to do with ice cream sandwiches? You know, how should we look at appropriate conduct in social gatherings?
Absolutely, and I think the hallmark of the social gatherings exemption is based in, if you look at the statutory exception, it's looking at subject matter, and to the work of the commission. Ice cream sandwiches and ice cream social, menu planning, that kind of thing. And it's a ridiculous example, but it is one that I often use. Is like food is a great way for folks to connect interpersonally, and food is relevant to this work, but it is not the subject matter of the Racial Equity Commission. I think it's relevant to us culturally. Yeah, absolutely. So when there are social gatherings and there's a majority or more of the members of the commission, I think that the North Star needs to be on content and what is being discussed. And I think that you're spot on there.
Commissioner Richardson?
How would this impact any trainings that the commissioners might want to have?
That's a fantastic question, and there are a couple of ways that that generally the safest way to do a training is in groups of smaller groups. So I think more effective trainings often involve a back and forth with the individuals being trained. But to the extent that there is a training that touches on the subject matter, and if you have 3 attendees and they're going back and forth, that can be okay. But then those 3 attendees need to be tracking the issues that they discussed and not bring that back to a majority of the group. So it's applicable. A training, it depends also on precisely what is the nature of the training. If the training might be on like interpersonal communication or like a skill set, maybe that's a different analysis. But if it's more substantive in looking at something that is in within the purview of this commission, then I think we would need to talk about numbers of attendees and what that nature of participation is. A one-way training, everyone sitting in a Zoom and they don't have the ability to participate, generally that's going to be okay. But there's chat functions, there's texting. So whenever everybody's in the same thing, I always my flag goes up. These are great questions, by the way. Thank you.
Other questions from our commissioners? We'd like to now take any public comments related to this agenda item on the Bagley-King Act overview.
If there is anyone who wishes to comment on this item, please fill out a comment card for in-person public comment. We have comment cards up in the front. Please make sure to grab one and complete it and return it to the front, or raise your hand for virtual public comment now. We do not have any in-person public comments. I will now hand it over to Mina for any virtual public comments.
If there are any virtual public comments at this time, please use the raise hand feature. I believe there are no virtual public comments at this time. I'll hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we will now move on to the Executive Director's report from Dr. Larissa Estes.
Thank you, Chair Wood. I need you. Thank you, Nikki. Next slide, please. All right. Thank you so much, Chair Wood, and we'll have a copy of the Executive Director's report available to everyone, and it'll be posted online on our website. Initially, I'm going to provide a bit of organizational updates, go over the charge of the Commission, and talk a little bit about kind of where we're going, as well as not acknowledge some folks that have helped us get to this point of having our first meeting. So the Racial Equity Commission was established by an executive order N-1622 with the following directives: establishing a commission and appointing commissioners, to hold hearings and perform acts to carry out the duties, engage with advisors or advisor committees and policy experts, rely on publicly available information and data to develop resources, best practices, and tools. And really more specifically, the Commission has been charged with developing a statewide racial equity framework no later than April 1st, 2025. And within that framework, it would include strategies to advance racial equity and address structural racism, budget methodologies and budget equity assessment tools, data collection and analysis, specifically related to the disaggregation of data and applications of proxies for race. We are also charged with providing technical assistance to state agencies and local governments who are interested in advancing their own racial equity work, and ensuring that stakeholder input and feedback is received, considered, and embedded within our work moving forward. Earlier in 2023, Governor Gavin Newsom appointed 7 members to the Commission. In July of 2023, there were 4 commissioners appointed by the Senator Pro Tem and the Speaker of the Assembly, which were announced earlier in the year, giving us our full commission of 11 individuals. Commission staff, to be very clear, are embedded within the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and our website is now live. You can find information on our work at racialequity.opr.ca.gov. And also within that website, you can sign up to receive our newsletter as well as additional communications from the Racial Equity Commission. And we just ask for grace as we continue to build out that website and build out our content, but that's where you will find all our agendas, meeting minutes, as well as any recordings of our meetings. In terms of staffing, the Commission has been really supported by a couple of staff persons in particular. First, we have our consultant, Joyce Chow of Abundance DEI Consulting. And Joyce's role is to provide project management support, facilitation, as well as some note-taking. And Joyce has really been my right hand for the last 3 months, really supporting the Commission in its capacity to be able to be here today. So I do just want to publicly acknowledge Joyce, who I think is back here in the corner. Thank you, Joyce. We will also have, we have 2 staff that are here with us. I believe today we have Ashley Garrity, who has joined the Commission staff as a senior program analyst. Ashley comes from a wealth of experience on equity across a variety of government systems. Ashley will be focusing on the development of the framework and will collaborate with other staff on supporting the activities of the Commission. So welcome, Ashley. And finally, y'all are just going to find this out today, Dr. Alfredo Huante. I don't know if Dr. Huante is in the room today and maybe online. Oh, there you are. Hey! This is the first time I'm seeing him in person because you do everything over Zoom. So hi, glad to have you here. And Dr. Huante will be joining us in about a week and a half as our second senior program analyst. So welcome. It's so good to see you in person. And we have a third FTE that we'll be bringing on for a program analyst role. I believe the applications are closing. They either closed last week or will close this week, and we hope to move forward on reviewing apps for that role. And that role will specifically look on supporting research, communications, and program administration for the Commission. In terms of program updates, it's been a busy last few months for myself as well as support from the OPR staff. I had the opportunity to provide an overview of the Commission and the vision that I've had thus far related to the Commission to the state agency undersecretaries this past December, and we'll be actually participating in a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Leadership Summit panel hosted by Governor GovOps on Monday, which is quite a quick turnaround for me. but excited to have the Chief Equity Officer of GovOps, Pam Chu, here joining us as well. Thank you, Pam, for coming. I've spent time actually starting to engage agency leadership and actually reviewed CALSA, which is our transportation agency. I've reviewed their strategic plan and spent some time with them talking about equity and how do you embed equity within strategic planning. And so we've already really started to hit the ground running, even though we don't quite have a framework. Commission staff have been positioned to just start having the conversation and encouraging departments and agencies to really explore what equity looks like for them within their lanes, and then how do you start thinking about how it fits into your documents and how you operate. I've also had the opportunity to engage with racial equity leaders from other states, including Oregon and New York. And I've got a whole list here of entities and individuals that we've met with thus far. I'm not going to belabor the list, but we will have that list posted. But it is centered around the SB 17 stakeholder group that helped inform the development of the Racial Equity Commission, and many others, as well as state agencies throughout our government. In terms of planning for the framework, I've developed a proposed timeline here, and this will be the first time you all are seeing this. And part of our requirements, not only to meet regularly, but also to include a level of stakeholder engagement as part of that process. And so I've tried with a very short runway to get a framework completed by April 1st. I have, if someone could please mute your computer, thank you. I've developed out what I think is a reasonable timeline to have meetings, as well as allow for ad hoc or standing committees to meet, to engage, to develop out where we're at with the framework. You'll see a series of meeting dates here. Of course, our first one being today, our next one being in March of this year, which will be in Delano, Kern County. And moving forward, I think we're going to LA, Inland Empire, the Bay Area, and then back up to Sacramento. And that's just this first year. Our intent is to meet community where they are and to also go to other areas of the state that often aren't included. And so I have a big vision. Commissioner Hedrick, you were talking about everything on the other side of the valley. And, you know, I have a vision that we are touching people there, that we are going and traveling to spaces and places for which folks don't always feel like they're included in our state government. And part of this is that civic engagement that is really important to ensure that their needs are also being met. Much of this information will be updated and available on the website, but I did want to provide the opportunity for you all to see at least a draft timeline of what we've been thinking of. So it's not a lot of time, but we'll do our best to make it work with what we got. And my next order to talk a little bit about some additional work that we've started. Through some initial conversations with administrative officials as well as external stakeholders, we've learned that there hasn't really been a comprehensive documentation of all the racial equity efforts across the state. And the purpose of needing to identify what those efforts are is to really inform how we need to shape a framework that is responsive to what is already going on, but also how are we being reflective of the successes that have already happened, how do we lift those up, but also how do we identify what challenges that may be happening across state agencies as well as local government and even within community, and design a framework that is responsive to those needs as well. The idea is that we understand the breadth and the depth of the work that is happening, but also ensuring that the framework is complementary and supportive of existing efforts. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on the next agenda item of what we've learned to date thus far. To conclude my report, I would just like to particularly thank the entire staff of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research for their support in preparing and helping to ensure that this first meeting is a success. Particularly, I want to shout out to the IT department, HR, business services staff, and executive leadership team. Like, they really need to get called out in this, and just making sure that we were able to have everything to have today actually happen. Particular thanks to the members of the administration for their ongoing guidance and support in this work, and then to the commission members. It's been hard to kind of get to know you and being in such disparate places, but you all have made time for me. You've been active, you've been flexible, and you've extended a tremendous amount of grace over the last few months as we've begun to establish and set up this commission. So thank you all for being really great teammates to work with in this space. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Chair Wood for any public comment or question or discussion from the commission.
We'd like to hear from the public on comments related to this agenda item from the Executive Director's report before hearing from the Commission. Any public comments related to the Executive Director's report?
If there is anyone else who wishes to comment on this item, please fill out a comment card for in-person public comment. We have comment cards up at the front. Please make sure to grab one and complete it and return it here to my left with Alex. Alex, please raise your hand. Or raise your hand for virtual public comment now. We do not have any in-person public comments. I will now hand it over for virtual public comments.
We'll now begin the virtual public comments, starting from C. Sequoia Erasmus. If you can begin your public comment, that would be great.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, thanks. Good morning and congratulations to newly elected chair, vice chair, and appointed commissioners. And thank you and congratulations to commission staff for all your hard work putting together this important racial equity commission. My name is Sequoia Erasmus, and I serve as the Associate Deputy Director of Equity and Public Engagement with the California Transportation Commission. And I serve as a lead staff for our Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Committee. The committee advises the Commission, Caltrans, and CalSTA on policies, programs, and funding strategies to improve equitable outcomes in transportation throughout our state. And I'm proud of the 15 experts in transportation equity from throughout California who have supported us for the last year to set up our committee and set priorities and strategies. And on behalf of the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee and our interagency coordinating team at the Commission, Caltrans, and CalSTA, I want to welcome you all to your new positions and offer support and collaboration as we move together to strengthen and embed equity practices in our collective strategies and programs throughout state agencies. Thank you so much for all your hard work and look forward to meeting you in the future. That concludes my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to Latanya Richards, and at this time, if you can give your public comment.
Hi, my comment was just, I appreciate the effort you guys are doing with this racial equity commission. I would just suggest that when you're collecting the data, send people out that look like the demographic you're trying to collect the data from to get it, because that's way you'll get better results and more honest results, because people that look like, you're going to be more open with people that look like yourself than just sending someone else out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now begin the next public comment from Brandon Green. At this time, if you can provide your public comment.
Hi, my name is Brandon Green. I'm the Legislative Advocacy Director for the Western Center on Law and Poverty. I just wanted to comment and say that I am excited that the commission is getting its work started, and just wanted to sort of note and look forward to hearing and seeing via the commission's work sort of how we as a state intend to respond and operate in the current social political climate in which everything around racial equity is under threat and under attack, whether it's DEI programming, whether it's programming that specifically targets historically disenfranchised community. I think it's very important that we as a state show that we are not going to let a chilling effect impact the work. And so I look forward to working with the commission and seeing the commission via its work show that we actually have fidelity to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next virtual public comment comes from Francisco Velasquez. You can provide your public comment at this moment.
Hello, my name is Francisco Velasquez. My organization. A question I have is...
If you can speak up a little bit, we have a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is perfect. Thank you.
Okay. My question is, what kind of challenges will we face in hiring more staff to provide resources to the statewide members in support of the Commission's goals with the current budget concerns in the California state budget? I think that committing funds to this cause that can weather seasons of low funding should be a priority. This is to ensure that the good work continues even in times of financial strain. Thank you.
Thank you. The next virtual public comment comes from Suzanne Kim. If you can provide your comment at this time.
Hi, Commissioner. Sorry about my comment earlier. Sorry, turn down my volume. Congratulations on the forming this committee. I really, really appreciate it. Couldn't come at a more timely time. We are starting to see areas in the government and in other sources where proxies are being used to exclude frontline communities, such as low-income communities and communities of color. Your work is timely and urgent as we are starting to see the entrenched impacts of COVID. And as we're seeing these budget deficits actually impact what little public funding we have, if there's any way to speed up the timing of your work and also to increase the impact of your work, we would greatly appreciate it. But I am telling you today, these budget food fights that we're seeing right now are going to have lasting impacts. Unfortunately, we did fall from the federal government of funds coming down, trickling down to the state, and that's also getting impacted. So I've sent all of you an email, individual emails, so we can meet about these particular impacts and how we can actually constructively and see how we can mitigate these impacts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This will now conclude our virtual public comments. I'll pass it back. Thank you.
Are there any discussions, questions, or comments from the Commission on this item, the Executive Director's report? Okay. All right, our next agenda item is to discuss racial equity activities in California with an initial presentation from Executive Director Dr. Larissa Estes.
Thank you, Chair Wood. Let me get the slides moving here. So, as I shared earlier in my director's report, there wasn't quite an understanding of all the activities that are going on across the state related to racial equity. And we know that there's work happening, but there's no central place that kind of holds that information. And really the purpose of what we were looking to do is to identify efforts across the state to, again, support the development of our framework and really to understand the breadth and the depth of the work so that the framework is complementary and supportive of the efforts. And I do want to also add the acknowledgement that this work is just the tip of the iceberg that we're going to share here today. There's much more that's happening, and I think we want to just start the process of understanding what is happening so that we can start building the framework as to how we find out more. So we worked with the California Research Bureau to identify specifically legislation, executive orders, and administrative policies over the last 10 years. And we were really focused on kind of administrative policy, not necessarily programs. We looked at other issues related to Proposition 209, as well as affirmative action, and I'll get to a list of all the terms that we use to search. We did not use budget proposals. That could be a future and next step, but we really wanted to kind of start with something that might be tangible, especially with a staff of one, to be able to start to look and understand with what's going on. And we worked very closely with the UC Possibility Lab, which helped take the spreadsheet that was developed by the Research Bureau and start to kind of look as to where there were themes and alignments as to what type of policies have been introduced, what type of legislation has come out. And in that review, they also took a look at the members or agencies that had participated in the Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity in their training program that they have for state agencies, looking at their websites to see kind of what other information is kind of right out there public facing. We are really committed to taking this another step and beginning to understand what's happening at each agency, and that's kind of what we're kind of working towards at this point. Just so you're aware, this is the variation of search terms that we used to identify what type of policies, administrative code, and executive orders are out there. This was uniquely focused on state government, and we do want to acknowledge that some department names may have changed over time. There may have been reorganization from departments into agencies, and so we may not be able to track implementation, but this, again, is an initial step to just have baseline understanding of what has been directed through legislation, administrative code, or executive order. And what you find here are the results. You can see it's on your screen here, and as well as will be on slides that will be posted later. There were 26 bills that were introduced. 70% of them came between 2019 and 2023, which I think speaks a lot as to the sign of the times and kind of where we are today. Of those, over 13 were related to Proposition 209. And again, just providing some additional context as to legislation potentially looking to address what may be perceived as complications with that proposition. There were 10 administrative policies, again, 80% of those enacted between 2018 and 2023. And the policy areas, these are specific policy areas to the bills, executive orders, and administrative policies. So environment, education, and equitable access to services were common themes. I do want to lift up that that's what we kind of found in the research lab landscape analysis, and Possibilities Lab then took a next step of looking at the C-Corps participants in those agencies and just glancing at their websites. So this slide is a reflection of the themes that were identified on websites. This may or may not be a complete sample, but it's at least a glimpse as to what agencies are talking about on their public-facing websites. So the acknowledgement of racial disparities, their commitment to identifying a framework to guide their racial equity efforts, capacity to facilitate and support racial equity efforts, the development of the racial equity action plans, and several other key themes came out of a review of those websites. I do want to lift up a couple, just again to further acknowledge that this is the first step, but we do know there's quite a bit of work that's happening. For example, Cal EPA noted on its website that many communities of color and low-income communities face disproportionate exposure to pollution in the air, water, and soil from pesticides. California Department of Food and Agriculture acknowledged the historical discrimination that has shaped the state's agricultural industry and the barriers entering or staying in the industry that remain today. Caltrans on its website noted that communities of color have experienced fewer benefits and a greater share of the negative impacts associated with the state's transportation system. And so that was just a slight deeper dive into the work that is happening. We do also want to acknowledge that there are state entities that have equity personnel that have been established, and this is just a list of what we've been able to identify thus far. It is not exhaustive. But you can see the different titles. There's no consistency really in the titles, and that's probably relevant to each agency and kind of what each agency is looking to advance in their own work related to equity. But we did want to provide a little bit more information as to what we've been able to learn and understand over the last couple months. In terms of our next steps, our goal is to really explore a future partnership with an entity to help us dive deeper into understanding what's happening at the state and across state agencies. We are considering potentially a survey or some sort of key informant interview process to dive deeper. It's one thing to acknowledge race and racial equity on your websites, but there's likely much more that's going on within your agencies and departments, and we want to be able to better understand that, so that informs our work. I think there's also an opportunity to learn from what's happening in the community and through nonprofits, as well as other community-based organizations, to understand what type of racial equity work they are doing and how a framework like this could better support their work moving forward. We're also interested in really lifting up where there has been success, where there are best practices that have been developed, and so celebrating that success. I think racial equity work is really hard. It is a lifetime's work, and it is work that happens across generations. And there are these glimmers of hope and light that we have to absolutely celebrate to keep us moving forward. Another part is really understanding the challenges that we are seeing. And, you know, if somebody's experiencing one challenge, it is likely that other agencies are experiencing those similar challenges. And so we do want to make sure that we are being mindful of what those challenges are, what are lessons learned, as well as what are the technical assistance needs and opportunities that these agencies would like to see happen. I want to acknowledge the California Resources Bureau, the Possibility Lab at UC Berkeley, the State of Equity, Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity, as well as the Health and All Policies Task Force for helping me to kind of wade through this information at a high level. And I'm happy to take any questions or discussion from the Commission as well as public comment. Thank you.
So we would like to hear from the public on comments related to this agenda item on the racial equity in the state before we hear from the Commission. So we'll go to public comment first.
We will have in-person public comment first. I will begin the public comment period by reading the names of everyone who signed up to comment on this item. If I miss anyone, please go ahead and line up at the dais. You will have 2 minutes to make your comment. The timer will be presented on the screen. When you hear your name, please line up at the podium in the order your name was called. I will then call on you individually to the podium so you can speak. We have received comment cards from the following individuals for item number 8. Will Maria Barakat and Julian Kaplan, as well as Stephanie Flores, please step to the podium. Thank you. You may begin your comment.
Hi there. I am so happy to be with you all today. We've been waiting a long time for you. My name is Maria Barakat. I'm the Program Manager for Transformative Racial Equity with the Green Lining Institute. We were a member of the SB 17 coalition that worked to make racial equity entities possible in California. I was able to spend much of 2023 conducting in-depth studies of racial equity government transformation and provide best practices for racial equity frameworks, budget tools, data strategies, and Prop 209 in partnership with the OPR, Strategic Growth Council, and equity staff at the Department of Finance. So I am your resource. I am here for you to support your work, and I look forward to meeting with you all and working closely to make your work as effective and powerful as possible. We all know why we're here today. The radical racial equity racial inequity that we see today did not happen by accident. Decades of white supremacist government policies, function, and structure have entrenched inequity into the fabric of our society. And for many of us in California, we know that this work is urgent and long overdue. Racial equity is not only an outcome that we seek, it's a formal practice, and realizing equity requires an established, evidence-based approach with processes, key processes and success factors. The Commission is tasked with the critical role of defining racial equity for the state and the tools required for government jurisdictions to make social, political, and economic systems work for everyone. Thanks to the years of work by Greenlining and so many other organizations and legislators in the state, there's a robust racial equity infrastructure already in place throughout the state, local, county, and state jurisdictions. Equity staff, trainers, frameworks, and budget tools already in place waiting for your guidance. And I so look forward to supporting you in your journey.
Thank you. You may begin your public comment.
Okay. Greetings. My name is Julia Kaplan. I'm the Executive Director for State of Equity, which Dr. Estes referred to our work. And I want to start out just by offering gratitude to all of you, gratitude to Dr. Estes for stepping into this daunting role, gratitude for each of you. This is an unpaid role, and of just recognizing the labor that you already put into the world and that you're doing here as well. And I know that our success depends on bringing racial equity principles into how we do this work, and in addition to what we're seeking, and that includes collaboration, that includes collective responsibility, it includes building community power in the very process of this work. There's a large base of government workers that are already uprooting institutional and structural racism in their organizations, as Dr. Estes referred to, and in addition to local jurisdictions, our organization, through the Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity, has engaged over 500 state government workers so far in over 50 different departments, boards, offices, agencies, commissions, supporting them as they are not only learning about racial equity, but also building leadership teams, embedding racial equity into their strategic plans, their budget processes, making changes to payment structures to get funds to community groups, workforce changes, community partnerships, and so much more. And also many Black, Indigenous, and people of color government workers who themselves are facing racism within their own organizations as they're seeking to transform those systems. So we're here to help, to support. We commit to being a partner to all of you. We're in this together. I hope you know that there is a huge base of support, advocacy groups, organizing groups, and government workers, and we're really in this together. Thank you. More soon.
Good morning, good afternoon, esteemed members of the Commission. Speaking to the microphone, sorry, I'm short. Good afternoon, good morning, members of the Commission. My name is Stephanie Flores. I am a Staff Services Manager 1 Specialist with the Department of Social Services in our Office of Equity. I have been participating in the C-Corps, and I have been a member of our department's Racial Equity Working Group for about 5 years now. So I have various concerns, but I'll just stick to the top two right now that come to mind. Number one, alignment. I think we have an abundance of efforts in the state for racial equity and for equity, but we're not necessarily always aligned with one another, and we're not always aligned with our C-Corps methodology. And I do find that deeply concerning because we're allowing flexibility to make it what your own, but not everyone is actually at a space to make it their own and have it be effective and impactful. Some folks are still trying to just check a box. And I am really asking for more than just check a box. It should be a requirement to do things in a specific way because they have not demonstrated that they're capable of doing it yet. And to another point that was made by one of my colleagues earlier, and I'm sure you're all familiar with, not everyone in state service is allowed to participate in these efforts in the same way, and they're not all supported in the same way. I feel that myself as a light-complected person that speaks English really well, is received really well. But I have, over the 5 years, heard over and over again from my colleagues, particular Black women, that always receive pushback from their staff, from their management. They don't have the same support. And no matter how many times I attempt to escalate these issues, the response that you receive is that it's actually really complicated and we can't really do anything about it. So I would really hope that we have some more support from y'all, from HR, to make sure that people of color that want to do this work are allowed to, and we're not just being championed by white saviors who are supported in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone that we missed, please step up to the podium now.
Good afternoon and congratulations, Commissioners and Dr. Estes, for your appointment. My name is Khadija Alam. I am the new Executive Director of California Commission on Asian Pacific Islander American Affairs. I bet you didn't know we existed. We are your sister agency, Racial Equity Commission. We have been in existence for 22 years. We are in statute. I've had the privilege of working on SB 17 when I was with Catalyst California before joining the commission. So I'm very vested in working with you guys. I want to see this commission succeed, but I also want to make sure that I am a partner with you in this work, in this journey. API community, ANAPI community is over 6 million strong in California. So when you do go into the community, thank you for doing that, by the way, suggesting that. When you do go into the community, I want us to be intentional about also reaching the API community where they are. So I very much look forward to working with you in this space, and congratulations once again.
Thank you. This concludes in-person public comment for item number 8. I will now, there's one more person. Is there one person? Please come up, sorry about that.
Okay, good morning, and thank you all. First off, congratulations to all of the commissioners. We made it. My name is Sedalia King. I'm the Associate Director of Government Relations for Catalyst California. We're also one of the co-sponsors for this bill. We've been working on it since 2021, so this was a long time coming. It was a labor of love for the state of California, and we're really proud to see this come to fruition. Also, just a quick round of shout-outs. We want to send a thanks to Senator Pan for his fearless leadership to make this possible, and also Governor Newsom for following through and making sure this was a priority. Also, I feel like folks were trying to hint at it or wrap their head around it, but I also want to make sure we shout out to the amazing partnerships we made to allow this to be a thing. And it's formed with Community Coalition, the Greenlighting Institute, Next Gen Policy, Public Health Advocates, and SEIU California. California has been a beacon of hope for racial equity across our nation, but more is still needed to make this a reality for all Californians. The Racial Equity Commission is the next step in our collective journey for our state government to embrace innovation and realize this vision and accept accountability for its role in creating and maintaining racial disparities. By centering racial equity in its decision-making processes, policies, practices, and budget priorities, and emphasize budget in the middle of a deficit struggle, we can finally address the systemic racism that has plagued our state since its inception. So thank you again. We look forward to working with you, having these conversations, and ultimately making a California available for everyone to thrive.
Thank you. If there's anyone else, please step up to the podium. And as a reminder, after you completed your public comment, please make sure to complete a public comment card so that we can go ahead and track them. Thank you.
Sorry, I got a little confused with the agenda items. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Dr. Estes. My name is Usama Muqaddam, and I'm the Director of State Policy at Public Health Advocates, which is one of the members of the California Racial Equity Coalition, whose efforts on SB 17 ultimately culminated in the creation of this commission. First, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you for this flagship meeting, and thank you for being so inclusive of public voices in it. For the past several years, our organization, along with key advocacy partners, has shifted much of our capacity to address the public health crisis in our state that is systemic racism. For far too long, systemic racism has not only detrimentally impacted the day-to-day lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in California, but exponentially contributed to their being left behind when emergencies and crises arise. The very existence of this commission, the reality that we're all sitting in here today, is a testament to the positive will and intent of the many changemakers who identify racism as a public health crisis that plagues our society and see the need for it to be addressed. Many of us come to you today with proposed solutions and plans to close this gap of inequity in California. We have an opportunity to work together to create change that will reverberate for decades to come. We also acknowledge that there is no one solution, but rather a network of systemic solutions for a systemic problem. For example, as we were speaking with Commissioner Richardson recently regarding our proposed equity framework for emergency funding, which we have some information for you here today on, we agreed that one of the many solutions would be to ensure that on-the-ground organizations who represent disadvantaged communities should quickly come to mind in times of crisis and flexibly receive the resources needed to ensure the safety of their communities. Standardizing processes such as this one in all facets of our state's decision-making process is essential to ensuring true equity. We look forward to working with you moving forward and to your commitment to creating a more equitable future. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, esteemed members of the Racial Equity Commission. My name is April Jean, Policy Director of the Emergency Resilience Project with Public Health Advocates. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today as we collectively grapple with how California takes on racial equity and also future emergencies. As the world experienced COVID-19, Californians are also facing various other emergencies such as monkeypox, wildfires, floods, droughts, earthquakes, which all demanded our immediate attention. While it is true that all Californians were affected, it is also true that we were not all affected in the same way. Indigenous, Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other marginalized communities who have also been fighting to get an equal footing for generations bear the weight of these perpetual burdens. For example, access to safe, affordable housing has deep roots in redlining, redistricting, and gentrification. During the pandemic, the cost of housing skyrocketed while many of our communities faced illness, causing long-term disability, loss of employment, and deaths of family members. Add on the challenges to accessing healthcare, transportation, and the digital language divides, and you can see why this emergency was keenly felt by those who were already marginalized. To address this, we must adopt a targeted approach that not only acknowledges but also rectifies historical injustices. A one-size-fits-all approach does not and will not work. California urgently requires the establishment of an equity framework for emergency and future funding. This framework would redress imbalances by strategically allocating financial resources and support to communities facing the greatest challenges. At the heart of this is the imperative step of inclusive data and data collection and disaggregation. By collecting and disaggregating inclusive data, policymakers and decision makers can tailor responses to ensure that resources are directed where they are most needed. This targeted approach mitigates disproportionate impact on BIPOC and marginalized communities. I urge you to establish the equity funding framework for future emergency funding. Let's commit to a California where the response to emergencies is not just swift but also just. Thank you for your commitment to creating a more just and equitable future.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Amara Susana Sid, Deputy Director for Community Investments and Planning with the Strategic Growth Council. I'm here to just extend extreme gratitude and excitement for you all today and all the work to continue, and also to share from our council that we are here to lock arms with you, share our support, share our resources. We have a wealth of resources, and we're just really excited. Our Executive Director, Lynn Von Koch-Lieber, is extending that gratitude as well. Anything we can do to support our tools, our resources are yours to collaborate on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to pause for a quick moment before we continue with our in-person public comment because we have a special guest. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Larissa Estes, our Executive Director, to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Chair Wood, and we will get right back to public comment in just a moment, but we do want to acknowledge Assemblymember Alex Lee here. Thank you for coming to our inaugural meeting, and we welcome any remarks you may have.
Thank you so much. I'll be brief so we can return to the important business of actually listening to feedback from the community. I'm Alex Lee. I'm the State Assembly member for the 24th Assembly District in the East Bay and in the South Bay, which is actually home to the largest district for Asian Americans in the state of California. In fact, 60% of all people that live in my district are Asian American. I just wanted to congratulate, of course, the Commission on your inaugural meeting. It has been a long time coming, but also to elucidate on some of the challenges, of course, that our state faced. Yes, as you heard from many folks in the audience today, that our state is frankly a racist state since it was born, even when we took it from a different colonial power. So, and that's something really important to recognize, is that of course, we can learn so much from the past, and I remember often that it was probably someone who sat in my seat that authorized, legal bounties on Native Indigenous peoples, or wanted my people to never live here and could never marry too. But it is our responsibility now in our generation, in our time, to correct these injustices, and we have to do it with a lot of urgency. Even in the little span of time that I have been honored to be in my seat, I've been very proud to work with the API community to secure $165 million in anti-Asian hate funding for the community, which is really important. And I think something I want to highlight for that, and what was very important to our API caucus at the time, was it is so easy at the time to say there are a bunch of bad people out there and we have to put so much money into policing and into a lot of offensive things to do. But what we directed the money for was to build more understanding for the community, put in community-based organizations, ethnic media, because the true cure to hate is understanding. You can't hate someone that you really understand or love. It's very hard. Well, for family members, sometimes we feel that way, but it's a different kind altogether, right? But true understanding is what melts that away. And I want you to understand that the the API Legislative Caucus, we very much value that kind of understanding and trying to go and putting that where we put the money towards. Of course, I'm also a member of the LGBT Caucus as well, and so we're always trying to explore all the intersectionalities that all of us in California face. Not all our identities are immediately visible, not immediately readily recognized, but we all live many multifaceted lives. And I believe the state budget, in its almost $250 billion, even today, $250 billion size, is very important to reflect those values. And even though right now we have challenges where the ultra-wealthy do super well and the working class don't do so well, and that is reflected in our budget right now because we have a progressive taxation system, it is still important to prioritize those funding. And you heard a lot about how do we assess what is the right metrics to help people of color and help communities in need. And I think it's going to be really important to evaluate that during this time. Even with great crisis, as was a couple of years ago with the pandemic, I think there's a great time to analyze what's inefficient, what doesn't work for our people. And I would challenge or ask the Commission to look at our internal processes. A lot of times in our bubble in Sacramento, we issue lots of money in the billions of dollars towards communities, but does it really affect the outcomes that we say we want to? Because that's the worst thing that could happen, right? With all the great intentions in the world, and yet we don't produce the outcomes that we want. Where are the missteps? Where are the inefficiency? Where are the silos between agencies or counties or cities, whatever it is? Because that is the real things that affect our communities of color. Because at the end of the day, if someone is a working parent in the Bay Area or Los Angeles, anywhere, and we hear the big headlines that we are going to do these great things for the people of California, but their own government doesn't provide it and doesn't make it easy, it makes it so illogical, and they want to give up on it, that undermines their faith in our democratic process, and we don't want that to happen. So if that's something maybe even possible for this commission to look at, and I of course want to thank the governor for putting this together too, look at those processes, especially at this time when we want to make sure every dollar has its impact. This is that time to look at that impact. And in fact, with some of the other things I worked on, including with the API money that we put in the budget, I was very proud, and this is kind of just giving an example of things that we can do, is I authored a bill and it was signed by the governor to establish an Environmental Justice Advisory Committee that included representatives of rural, urban, tribal, and farm worker communities that gave them a voice at the Department of Pesticide Regulation. Now, environmental racism is, of course, very real, and especially to our rural communities, and I hope this will be included as well. But I'm giving this examples because while we think a lot of times, I think, in the mainstream that a lot of racial inequities probably happens in public safety or the social services, it's just as often in the natural and ecological side as well, where there's so many communities, especially communities of colors who have worked for generations of farm workers, exposed to pesticides, and yet did not even have a formal role in advising our Department of Pesticide Regulation and informing them how their experiences are. Instead of, for a long time, industries sat at those tables. And of course, there's a different bend there. So I really hope that the Commission will be able to look at some of the processes and things that we've been able to accomplish. But I really think this year and maybe a couple of years from now on, they'll be really looking at a lot of the big goals we've set for ourselves, but are we meeting those goals? Is this really translating to everyday working families? Are they really getting the results? And that's what I think our your friends in the legislature will also be looking at right now. We want to be doing a lot of big things and leading the nation in showing how to correct racial injustice and historic racism, but we also have to make sure that we're solid in our own backyard and making sure we're doing it well. So I congratulate you on your inaugural meeting, and I know you'll have lots of great work. And my one last plug is be bold in your recommendations. Your recommendations are going to fall onto us, a lot of policymakers, so shoot for the stars. You'll end up landing on the moon anyways. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Lee. We know you have a tight schedule, so feel free to hang out if you'd like. And we'll go back to continuing in-person public comment and then move to virtual. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are people, or if there is anybody that's going to be submitting in-person public comment, please make sure to sit down here by these chairs, and then we'll go one by one.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Wood and Chair Wright. My name is Faith Lee. I am with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Southern California. AJ SoCal is a legal service provider, also a direct service provider serving Californians in LA and OC. I'm here as the Commission develops your framework to really advance racial justice. I implore you to really be a champion for language justice for Californians, especially those who fall out of the top 3 languages spoken in the state. In the term Asian Americans, in the Asian American communities alone, we have over 50 ethnicities and over 100 languages spoken within our community. Oftentimes, languages that are less commonly spoken are left out as California sets our priorities and funding allocations. And we see that these communities suffer during the most difficult economic times, such as the pandemic, where they cannot access unemployment insurance if they're limited English proficient. We're also seeing that for people who don't speak English, how do they understand their rights at their workplace? If they want to go to Cal OSHA for education, turns out there's, according to a KQED article, there's only one Chinese-speaking safety inspector out of the whole state expected to serve over 300,000 Chinese-speaking workers in this state who might not speak English, and one Vietnamese safety inspector serving 100,000 Vietnamese speaker workers in this state. As you may see in the headlines nowadays, there are over 5,000% increase of Chinese migrants arriving in our southern borders, and virtually no people who are serving Asian bilingual workers who are serving these migrants arriving in our state. So to really conclude, I ask the Commission to consider the importance of recommending more equitable funding models that serve Californians who are limited English proficient, including strengthening the bilingual workforce and that better serve our Californians and supporting our teachers teaching in our dual immersion classrooms. Thank you.
Just on the good afternoon, good morning mark. So hello, everyone. My name is Elena Santamaria. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor and Partnerships Manager at NextGen California. And I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with you all today. So looking forward to doing this work. I want to just plus one everybody's comments from what everybody said, particularly the state worker and supporting state workers and moving this work forward. And also an update, the SB7 working group is now the California Racial Equity Commission. We have been standing ready to do this work. We are now working on the implementation phase of what you all are working on and look forward to partnering with you all as this work continues. So just a quick update on our coalition and where we are in the working group itself. And just appreciate all the work you do and look forward to partnering with you all. We all stand ready and have been for the past 2 years to consistently monitor this work and make sure that the implementation matches what all our hopes and goals are for the state. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes in-person public comments for item number 8. We will now hand it over for any virtual public comments.
We will begin with Serena Ortega.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Serena, if you can give your public comment.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We have a hard time hearing you. If you can speak into the mic.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little bit better, yes.
I can hear you. Thank you so much. Well, congratulations for making this commission a reality. My name is Serena Ortega. I'm the Deputy Director of the Cal Fire Office of Civil Rights and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program. As the commission initiates the development of framework for survey resources for state agencies, we urge the commission to establish a working group to better understand the significant differences in organization, to really ensure that the creation and relevant framework is tailored to the diversity of the state organization. So as an example, this includes the very decentralized entities and very large departments that may differ significantly from agencies and state organizations. This is so very important when access these great resources.
Sorry, Serena, we have a really hard time hearing you. I do see that you did post your public comment. Would you mind if I read it for you? Okay, Serena, I will be reading your comment. So this is what Serena said. Good morning and thank you for allowing me to comment. As the Commission initiates the development of a framework to serve as a resource for other state agencies, I urge the Commission to establish working groups aimed at understanding the differences in the many state organizations to ensure that the creation of relevant framework is tailored to the diverse needs of state organizations, including decentralized entities and very large departments that may differ significantly from other agencies or state organizations. This is very important in the work that you do to ensure that we are all able to access these great resources and champion the good work of the Commission. We will now move on to the next virtual public comment from Ava Terrazas. If you
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to congratulate Dr. Estes and the Commission for this inaugural meeting. I'm Eva Terrazas, Chief Public Policy Officer with Pacific Clinics. We're a statewide behavioral health and child welfare agency. We are also committed to advancing racial equity and justice within our agency and in the communities we serve. 2 years ago, we hired a Senior Vice President of Racial Equity, Justice, and Inclusion, also known as a JEDI, which resulted in a 2022 report moving toward equity that resulted in 23 major cultural and policy-based change initiatives for our organization. Those changes are currently being implemented and will be implemented in over the next 2 years. We would love to partner with the Commission as it begins its important and challenging work in eliminating inequities and systemic racism. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now end the virtual public comment, and I will hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are nearing the end of our time, and at the same time, we still have a public comment, so we're going to encourage folks to render their comments as quickly as possible. We also want to be respectful that people made time to be here as well. So the Commission will now take public comments for matters that are not on the agenda. This is not a forum for dialogue with the Commissioners. Questions posed during this item cannot be substantially addressed or discussed at this meeting. Any required follow-up can be directed to the Racial Equity Commission Executive Director, Dr. Larissa Estes, for follow-up answers and connection to relevant staff. As a reminder, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker.
We will now begin.
Actually, I jumped the gun. I guess I shouldn't use that as violent language, but our commissioners did need an opportunity to be able to respond to the executive director's report. So are there questions or comments from the commission on this item? Commissioner Salas.
Thank you so much. The first thing I just want to say, thank you, gratitude, gracias to every single advocate and organization that made today's meeting and this commission possible. So I just really want to extend gratitude to each and every one of you and all the people who worked hard. My comment, for the executive director's report, you put through some of the search items that you looked at in order to really map out some of the work that has been done. My recommendation is that that we further expand those search items to include immigration status and also language access, specifically because there are many ways by which racial inequities happen through immigration status, and then just really want to continue to speak on the issue of language access, as was brought up by Asians Advancing Justice, and that we've actually had many successes at the state level over many, many years. So that's my recommendation to further expand our work.
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. And just to clarify, we are on item 8, racial equity efforts in the state, the discussion, not the executive director's report. We're fine.
Other comments from the commission? Commissioner Kim?
Thank you. So it was noted in the memo from Possibility Labs that there are multiple options moving forward in terms of the research. I guess when would we be able to discuss, maybe provide some guidance in terms of the research? Because this is a phenomenal foundation to start from, but it does seem like we need to look at things that they're not publishing on their website in terms of dynamics and issues.
Absolutely. There are a couple pathways that can occur. There's the opportunity to establish an ad hoc committee to work with staff. You can direct staff to directly follow up with the Possibilities Lab and have that conversation. We are actually exploring what that next step is right now and looking to broaden kind of how do we then get more of that information. And my initial thinking has been to develop a streamlined survey. We recognize that this is budget season, as well as folks are already kind of doing what they do and wanting to be mindful of asking for a little bit more. But the idea is we potentially do a survey, ask some pretty direct questions more broadly of all state agencies, and then for certain state agencies where there may be more challenges or a lot more successes, have follow-up, key informant interviews to really dive deep into what some of those challenges are and see if we can tease out more themes as to what are best practices, what are challenges, so that we then have that deeper information. So there are a couple of different ways the commission can go forward with that, but we are starting that process now to figure out what is our next step forward, and we can present that to the commission with some updates as well as at the next commission meeting. But work is happening.
My request would be that we agendize a conversation about next steps on this research for the upcoming commission meeting.
Sure.
1, 2, 3. Sorry.
Commissioner Matthews?
Yes. Oh, no. First, I just wanted to say fantastic job. I know it's been a little while, but really appreciated the summary of the racial equity efforts happening in the state already. And I also wanted to echo thanks to the whole village of support that we have in this work. It's encouraging to see so many people who stand ready to help us achieve this nuanced and difficult task ahead of us. The one question I did have is, as we are looking at how we're going to measure success, and we're looking at all of the initiatives and efforts happening across the state, across sectors, I think as the Cabinet Secretary mentioned, within and across, how are we seeing real value in lived experiences and perspectives across those sectors? I think that's something that we want to make sure is included and embedded, because I think it will speak to some of the concerns that I heard from the advocates and the different folks who spoke. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Matthews. Personally, for myself, lived experience is really important. And I think the executive order gave us the breadth and the opportunity to ensure that we're including that through the requirement of quarterly stakeholder engagement meetings, and that's what it states it as. I want to maybe pivot the term to community forum. But we will be doing those quarterly that in a way that coincides with our public meeting and aiming to try to do that way. That's also the perspective I have in going to different places across the state to ensure that we're meeting community where they are and really centering them and their needs. Because at the end of the day, the work that happens at the state eventually touches those on the ground, and we want to make sure that what we're doing, in the treetops gets to the grassroots and even below into the soil. So there are very important efforts around understanding lived experience and ensuring that we're capturing that. And I think the other side of it is those key informant interviews. And numbers are great, but they're only just numbers, and they don't really tell the story behind people's experiences, and that's where lived experiences come in.
Commissioner Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to agendize in the future, I would really like to have some more trainings from members of the coalition that established this. There were a lot of key terms and definitions that I may generally be familiar with, but I really want to hear from them about all of the specifics that went into forming this commission.
Commissioner Onodera.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question. I just really wanted to express my appreciation to Dr. Estes for everything she's done to get us all here today. I know it's been a ton of work. I also wanted to thank all of the public comment today. I want to say I'm just really excited, especially about all of the community engagement that's going to happen for all of us here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wright.
No question, just want to comment. Thank you so very much to all of the organizations that stepped up to the plate to try to make sure that all Californians have a voice, equal voice. That's so very important. I want to thank the staff, of course, for all the hard work getting this together. But we just have to move forward, but we have to continue to have that voice with all of the community organizations and make sure that all Californians have the same voice. Thank you.
Any other comments from our commissioners? All right. Well, with that, we will move to public comment. Again, this is we'll now be taking public comment for matters not on the agenda. This is not a forum for dialogue with the commissioners. Questions posed by the public during this item cannot be substantially addressed or discussed at this meeting. Any required follow-up can be directed towards the Racial Equity Commission's Executive Director, Dr. Larissa Estes, for follow-up answers and connections to relevant staff. As a reminder, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker.
We will have in-person public comment first. I will begin the public comment period by reading the names of everyone who signed up to comment on this item. As a reminder, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. The timer will be presented on the screen, and if you are calling in, we will notify you when your time is up. At this moment, there are no in-person public comments. I will now hand it over for virtual public comments.
Virtual public comments, we will hand it to Natalie Austin. At this moment, if you can present your public comment.
Greetings. Do you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Greetings, commissioners, and thank you, Dr. Larissa Estes. I think the work of racial equity is in all of the language that you have spoken today. And thank you for uplifting the work of CBOs and nonprofits who work very close to communities who are often underserved and invisible. I am Natalie Asun. I am the Director of Community Engagement and Government Relations with RANDS, which is a mental health nonprofit in San Francisco and Alameda County, serving our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities around mental health and the promotion of mental health and wellness. I also am the co-chair and the co-founder of the Regional Pacific Islander Task Force, and our goal is to increase the visibility of our Pacific Islander communities in California. Our work is centered in the Bay Area, and we have been a strong force during COVID to make sure that our Pacific Islander communities in the Bay Area and across California and the nation. Needs are visible to those who allocate and source out the resources. So I'd like to also remind our commissioners that community members, we are a resource to you. We are your ally. We are the voice to inform and shape policies, programs, and initiatives that promote racial equity, and also to undo the harms of policies and practices that have created persistent disparities, inequities in areas that impact our quality of life. I look forward to the work that you all are doing and in partnering with you all to make sure that the vision of racial equity is visualized. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we continue with virtual public comment, we do have one in-person public comment.
And if we missed anybody else for in-person public comment, please step up to the dais.
Good afternoon. Adrienne Schulten, I represent the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. We represent nonprofit, community-based organizations across California that are serving and supporting children and youth and families in public systems, including behavioral health and child welfare and juvenile justice and education. So our members are often at the cross-section of multiple systems working with vulnerable children and youth and families. And these are populations that have been, subject to many of the systemic challenges we've been talking about today, including racism, including poverty, including trauma. We were one of the organizations proudly supporting SB 17, working with Dr. Pan and the other organizations. So we're very proud to be here today and see this being stood up. We've also had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times now with Dr. Estes, and we're welcoming her actually to our upcoming conference as one of our opening speakers. So we just really look forward to liaisoning with the Commission. This is a historic opportunity to achieve racial equity across all aspects of governments, and we stand ready to partner with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to our remaining public comments.
Yes, we will now continue with the virtual public comments, continuing with Wins Lewis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Vince Leus, and I am with Prevention Institute, one of the members of the California Racial Equity Coalition. Prevention Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to advancing health equity and racial justice through policy, research, and practice that ensures Black, Indigenous, and all communities of color have a say in how government resources are used to serve their health, safety, and well-being. Prevention Institute would like to congratulate the Commission, the Governor, Senator Pan, OPR, and Dr. Estes, and the numerous advocacy groups who pushed for the creation of this commission on this inaugural meeting. We look forward to the opportunity to support the commissioners as it embarks on developing a racial equity framework for the state, and would just like to underscore the importance of creating culturally and linguistically accessible opportunities for people of color across the state to meaningfully participate in the work of this commission. We are so pleased to hear that the commission will be traveling across the state to hear from residents where they live. We'd like to thank Dr. Estes and the team for taking that initiative. We represent one of many racial justice and advocacy organizations with extensive experience implementing innovative policies to embed equity in government, and look forward to the opportunity to work in collaboration with the commissioners and the communities that this commission intends to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to Lori Jenkins. At this time, you can provide your public comment.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Lori Jenkins. I am one of the co-chairs for Lineage Equity and Advancement Project, or LEAP, which is a grassroots organization in Los Angeles. And our mission is to continue the work of Dr. King, which is to realize racial equity and repair for the over 400 years of slavery, racial terror, lynchings, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, redlining, and other atrocities. Make no mistake about it, Black American descendants of chattel slavery or American Negro freedmen are 10 times more likely to be victims of hate, discrimination, and inequities than any other minority group. That is the reason why we believe that this group should receive priority for funding, programming, and resources to combat the extreme levels of racial discrimination and terror that we have been subjected to. Anti-Black discrimination is rampant and practiced by all subgroups, and we believe that our repair should take precedence over all other groups. As Dr. King said in Chaos or Community, a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for the Negro. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you. And this will end our virtual public comment. I will now hand it back. Thank you.
So again, want to thank the Commission's Executive Director and staff for working hard to put together this meeting and for the coalition for the efforts in making today come to fruition. This brings us to our meeting adjournment. Is there a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Now I'll go to roll call vote. Or we can conclude by acclamation. Seeing none opposed, thank you for the Racial Equity Commission staff, the commissioners, and the public for joining us today and virtually. Our next meeting is March 21st, 2024 in Delano, California. And with that, we are adjourned.